Hi, my name is Rochelle Cohen. I'm here on behalf of the CLA Ethics Committee, which is a new committee to the CLA. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about the committee. First, I'll mention I work for a small law firm, Kehr, Sciff, Cohen, Cohen, in Los Angeles, California. And my practice is business transactional and then also ethics consulting. So the CLA Ethics Committee was recently formed, and the idea was that the CLA, being a statewide organization for lawyers, should have an ethics committee that's designated to provide education to all of its members, including the CYLA, and also to advocate on behalf of lawyers, to provide opinions about issues in what lawyers' responsibilities are, and then also to comment on other bar associations' opinions and give our thoughts on rules, legislation, things like that happening in the legal community. So I'll start by just saying a solicitation. If you have anything that you're interested in learning more about, or questions about your ethical responsibilities, we'd like to hear from you because we want to provide content and respond to questions that are interesting to all of our members, including the CYLA. So we'll be working with the sections in CYLA going forward, and we hope that you will reach out to us when you need ethics programming or anything related to that. So what we spoke about at our program, we've introduced our ethics committee, and then we also spoke about how law is changing. And some of you that are more recently practicing law might not remember working without computers, but there are many members of the bar who do. And so there's been a lot of changes, a lot of them related to technology, and certainly the way we all communicate now through our cell phones and texting. That's changed the way evidence comes up in court. It also changes the way that we're communicating and how we have to think about, how we're texting to clients and how do you keep that information. And then also changing the way we store information. We're putting a lot more information in the cloud. How secure is it? All those kinds of questions that come up. And what are our duties to our clients in storing their information that way? So some of it is technological, but there's also changes in how we live, and I think probably a lot of you can relate to this. There's more movement. So it used to be that attorneys went to a law firm and they stayed there their whole career, made partner, and that was their career. That's changed significantly. It's been changing. And so now lawyers are moving around, maybe within firms, going in-house, starting their own practices, then going back to a firm. So there's a lot of flexibility in how people practice today. There's also big changes, I think, in how people live because you can do a lot of things remotely on your laptop, through your phone. So you can work while you travel. You might travel to New York and you're still practicing law for your clients here in California. I know for older attorneys, and maybe you're not thinking of this yet, but you might want to retire one day, and maybe you want to retire to somewhere outside of California. And how does that work? Because our rules and our licensing is so state specific. And I think that's something where we're going to see a lot of change as we are all practicing law, that jurisdictions will be thinking about how does it work when you want to cross state lines. So there's other things. I think fee pressure is another thing that lawyers are experiencing. Different ways that people want to pay for services or don't want to pay, hopefully pay at some point. So flat fees and something that I don't know very much about, but cryptocurrency I know is something that's coming up as a new way of accepting fees, and what are your obligations there. So with all these changes, California has come out with new rules, and hopefully all of you are familiar or will become familiar with those new rules. They came out in November, became effective November 2019. So they're still relatively new. There's more rules, so more to read. And it's important as you're practicing, if you have questions about whether something you're doing is complying with your responsibilities as a lawyer, that you actually look at the rules and review them, because sometimes things that might seem intuitive, there might be a rule about how to deal with that that's different than what you might have intuitively thought. And so the rules are very specific. They lay out exactly, sometimes lay out what steps you must take, or at least give guidance. And so it's good to have a copy of that or be able to look at that online. I think there's some exciting new practice areas, and that's something that is, as younger lawyers, you might be getting into those practice areas, like cannabis. Immigration has had a lot of changes, or there's lots of news about it. And so those areas as well are something that this ethics committee is going to be looking at, and some of those have some issues that you might want to think about of how you're complying with your responsibilities as a lawyer. So thank you for joining me on this journey to get to know the CYLA Ethics Committee.